In 1799, George Washington died in a private room facing the Potomac. Beside his desk, a sealed letter was found. To the man who never replied. It was unsigned, never opened. What else did silence conceal? A glove on a vanity, a harp with one string, a letter unanswered. Between 1758 and 1799, Washington wrote of love to Sally Fairfax, married Martha Custis, and left no children of his own. But records whisper of omissions, rumors, and erased names. When he gave his country his name, what did he keep for himself? Welcome to history's ledger. George Washington was called the father of a nation, but within the walls of Mount Vernon, he left behind another story, not of revolution or policy, but of longing, omission, and tightly sealed rooms. He was a husband, a stepfather, a farmer, a distiller, a man who dined beneath hand-painted ceilings while letters from a woman he never married sat folded in a box at the back of his desk. This is not the Washington of marble statues. It is the Washington of silences, the unopened letter, the glove left on a vanity, the harp with one broken string. So let us turn the page. Let us walk through his house and open the ledger of what he chose not to say. The year was 1758. George Washington, 26, sat at his desk in Virginia. Not yet commander, not yet president. Just a man with the candle burning low and too much silence in the room. Outside, the Potomac moved like a thought unfinished. Inside, the desk bore old marks, ink stains, scratches left by compass points, and restless hands. The wax pooled beside the blotter, warm and milky. He wrote a letter, not to Martha Custis, the widow he was engaged to, but to Sally Fairfax, wife of his friend. He called her the lady. He recalled 1,000 tender passages. The words tried to stay formal, but the fire underneath showed. The pen paused once as if unsure, then continued. To Martha, his tone was different. An animating prospect, a phrase more contract than confession, respectable, strategic. Their marriage would bring land, wealth, position, a house on a hill with velvet-draped windows, but not poetry. Both letters were sealed, one sent, one remembered. Sally kept Washington's note for the rest of her life. He never wrote again. That silence became the shape of his private self, not denial, not confession, containment. He married Martha in 1759. With her came silver from London, land, dozens of enslaved laborers, and 2 children, Jackie and Patsy. He embraced them as his own. He ordered toys from England, miniature tea sets, dolls, carved horses. Their laughter echoed through freshly waxed halls, but no children followed. The nursery stood waiting, untouched. His body carried scars from smallpox, maybe tuberculosis, enough to leave a cradle unfilled. He could give a country his name, but not an heir. Patsy's epilepsy haunted the house. Seizures came without warning. Records speak of her collapse, of Washington pacing. When she died at 17, the harp bought for her remained. One string broken, the rest silent. Jackie followed a few years later, sickened in war, gone at 26. Rooms once alive with movement fell still. Crates of toys were closed again. The harp stayed in its corner. The air carried lavender and loss. And through it all, Sally's letter survived. Longer than the children, longer than the man. This was his private rhythm, affection paired with omission. Tenderness kept folded. He mastered both command and withholding. He left no children, but he left letters never answered, harps never played, names never written. The man who would father a country began with absence, sealed in wax, left unopened. When Martha Dandridge Custis married George Washington in 1759, she brought land, wealth, and 2 children. She also brought presents, quiet, firm, unmistakable. The rooms of Mount Vernon became hers as much as his. In the master chamber, a London-made mahogany vanity stood near the window. Inside, ribbons with the scent of lavender, tortoiseshell combs, folded letters. The mirror reflected more than lace and pearls. It reflected command. Guests noted her stature, barely 5 feet, and the way Washington listened when she spoke. She tugged his collar when he wasn't paying attention, pulled him down to her eye level. He didn't resist. They were equals in a house divided by roles. After Washington's election in 1789, Martha wrote that she was truly sorry to hear of it. To her niece, she described her role as First Lady as being a state prisoner. Behind the chandeliers and ceremony, her letters tell a quieter story, one of frustration, restraint, and obligation. Upstairs, velvet drapes, gilt mirrors, rooms staged for refinement. Downstairs, narrow corridors, low ceilings, Hercules commanding the kitchen hearth with copper pots and wood smoke. 2 worlds layered above and below. Martha moved between them with fluency. She managed accounts with precision, ordering porcelain from England, fabric from France, gifts for relatives, and the occasional indulgence for herself. Parcels arrived sealed in straw, their contents unpacked, sorted, some displayed, others stored. Her choices curated the house and the memory of it. After Washington's death, Martha began burning their letters. She opened drawers, untied ribbons, read, and fed them to the fire. No explanation offered, only the quiet weight of paper curling in flame. What she preserved was deliberate, what she destroyed more so. The architecture of Mount Vernon held her design, grandeur above, labor below, silence woven between. She selected the curtains, the flatware, the words that would survive. The home reflected her, elegant, watchful, formidable. What remains is not only what she kept, but what she chose to erase. The room spoke in velvet and silver, but the silence, The silence was Martha's voice. Before the presidency, before the title, there was a letter. The year was 1758. George Washington, engaged to Martha, wrote to Sally Fairfax, the wife of his friend. The ink was precise, the language formal, but the undercurrent clear. He called her the lady who haunted his thoughts. He spoke of feelings he had tried and failed to obliterate. He folded the letter with care. Wax sealed what duty would not allow. Sally kept it. He never wrote again. That silence became his answer, and part of his public myth. The homes they shared were not far apart. Across the river, at Belvoir, there were candle-lit parlors, dances, mirrors angled to flatter. He had been young there, full of want, still learning restraint. After the letter, restraint won. He married Martha in 1759. The match brought acres, status, order. Love followed, perhaps. All grew in time like ivy, slow, quiet, binding. But the tone of his words never matched those he had sent to Sally. In a drawer somewhere, she kept his page. When she died, it was still with her, not framed, not shared, simply kept. At Mount Vernon, there were no portraits of Sally, but the Heir remembered. A pause at the window, a book open on a page not about war, a letter folded and refolded but never sent. Memory lived in movement, not declaration. Guests at dinner praised his composure, his calm, his dignity. But they didn't see the alignment of things, which papers he kept on top, which slipped to the bottom of a drawer, which vanished without mention. There is a kind of affection that survives only because it is never touched. Washington mastered that form. Sally Fairfax did not damage his image. She deepened it, showed the fault line beneath control. The man who led armies once bent, quietly, towards someone he could not have. A soldier's life requires precision, so does longing when left unspoken. The cradle stood ready. In a quiet nursery at Mount Vernon, linen sheets were folded with care, lavender sachets tucked between drawers. The air smelled of cedar and starch. Everything waited, but no child arrived. George and Martha Washington had no children together. She had borne 4 with her first husband. 2 died young, 2 survived. He had none. The likely cause was smallpox, maybe tuberculosis. The records don't say, but the silence did. Still, Washington loved Jackie and Patsy as his own. He ordered toys from London, hobby horses, dolls, miniature tea sets. Crates arrived with English labels, the straw inside perfumed faintly by the sea. Their laughter briefly filled the house. But Patsy's epilepsy shadowed everything. The seizures came without warning, left her weak and silent. One summer afternoon, she collapsed. 17 years old, gone before the harp bought for her had been played more than a few times. The instrument stayed upstairs. Dust settled across its frame. One string broke, No one fixed it. Jackie, her brother, lived longer, married young, joined Washington in the field during the war. Then, fever, 26, buried in November cold. The cradle remained empty. No heir meant no line, no signature passed down. In a Virginia where bloodline ruled property and name, Washington gave neither. Objects remained: Patsy's miniature psalm book, a child's locket sealed with a wisp of hair, Jackie's portrait in uniform, the paint already fading at the edges. He led a nation, but he could not extend himself through blood. Mount Vernon held onto its echoes. Upstairs, rooms prepared but never filled. Downstairs, silence as sharp as silver. A nursery without a name becomes a different kind of memorial. The country called him father, but the house knew the absence more intimately. Her name appears only briefly: Venus, an enslaved woman at Mount Vernon, a line in a ledger, a labor assignment, nothing more. But family stories passed down through generations claim she bore George Washington's child, a boy named West Ford. There is no confession, no formal denial, only silence. The dates don't confirm or disprove it. Some say Venus arrived after Ford's birth. Others note his resemblance: the face, the eyes, the posture. Descendants swore the likeness was unmistakable. Washington longed for heirs. History suggests he was likely sterile, yet rumors of Ford endure, not in records, but in memory, in oral history, in the refusal to forget. A miniature kept by Ford's family shows a faint, familiar face. A Bible margin note reads simply, "Remember West." No surname, no detail, just the weight of what was left unsaid. Venus remains voiceless in the archives, her labor recorded, her presence not. But in the kitchen hearth, stories whispered. "This child," she once said, "will look like no other here." The phrase was never written, it survived by breath. Washington never acknowledged West Ford, no line in a will, no letter, but absence can imply as much as ink. The boy grew up, educated, given a role, not an heir, but not forgotten. The grave remains unmarked. Venus's name barely lingers. West Ford's legacy, faint but persistent, lives in a question that history still hasn't answered. Mount Vernon shines above ground, crystal, velvet, portraits. But beneath it, silence, rumor, an earth that remembers what paper erased. Not all battles are fought with muskets. In 1775, a Boston paper printed a letter claiming Washington had been gifted a washerwoman's daughter named Kate. The phrasing was crude, the tone factual. Readers whispered, taverns repeated it. No one confirmed it, but it spread. 2 years later, another forgery surfaced, a full trial transcript. It accused Washington of visiting a mistress, Mary Gibbons, in disguise. It listed dates, witnesses, details too polished to be real. She was said to read his letters while he slept. There was no trial, no Mary Gibbons, just ink, sharpened into fiction. Washington never replied. That silence became strategy. He allowed rumor to burn itself out. But silence has consequences. It can seem dignified or evasive. Even after Yorktown, the whispers didn't stop. Imagine a Philadelphia parlor, silver clinking, Madeira poured, portraits watching from the walls. A guest leans close and says, "Did you hear about Gibbons?" The host smiles, says nothing. The room moves on, but the story lingers. The architecture of rumor is simple. Repetition. No proof required, just breath and ink. Washington carried himself with poise, but he couldn't stop shadows from trailing his name. A forged letter can't kill a man, but it can scar the portrait. He left no diary entry on these smears, no rebuttal in the press, only stillness. And yet, those forgeries survive, preserved in archives, catalogued, footnoted, given space beside real letters. Which lasts longer, the truth or the lie that refuses to die? Martha Dandridge, Custis Washington, was not a shadow in the corner of history. She was 5 feet tall and made herself taller through presence. When she wanted her husband's attention, she pulled him down by the collar, not rudely, but firmly. He obeyed. Their marriage began in wealth and calculation, but not without affection. It offered him land and her a name. Together, they managed the estate, the household, the myth. But after the Revolution, when George became president, Martha wrote to her brother that she was truly sorry to hear the news. To her niece, she said she felt like a state prisoner. The role of First Lady did not thrill her. It restrained her. She played the part. Receptions, silks, polished smiles. But in letters, the ones that survived, you see the truth. She was exhausted, caged by public expectation. At Mount Vernon, she ruled. She ordered imported fabrics, chose porcelain patterns, arranged flower beds and dinner tables. In her dressing room, tortoise-shell combs, a vial of rose water, scissors with pearl handles, precision disguised fatigue. Downstairs, Hercules cooked beneath blackened rafters. Narrow corridors hid the labor that fed the silver-plated platters upstairs. The house held 2 worlds, and Martha moved between them, managing both, belonging fully to neither. After George's death in 1799, she burned their private letters. The act was quiet, no explanation given, only pages turned, read, then placed into file. What tenderness did she erase? What doubts? No one knows. She refused to sleep again in the room where he died, moved into a smaller chamber, away from the river view. The master bedroom remained untouched. Grief was not theatrical, it was selective. She preserved what guests would admire. She destroyed what they'd never see. So what survives velvet curtains, silver initials, a silence she authored herself. Mount Vernon was built to impress. The west parlor shimmered in bold verdigris green, a color as costly as it was commanding. Candles lit crystal, portraits watched from gilt frames. Guests walked polished floors beneath velvet drapes, and ceilings painted to glow in late light. Above stairs, refinement gleamed. Porcelain from Canton, damask upholstery, mirrors that multiplied candlelight into quiet performance. Below stairs, life worked in shadow. Hercules, the enslaved chef, ruled the kitchen like a general. Copper pots steaming, hearth smoke thick, floorboards blackened by heat. The air smelled of yeast, fire, and flour. No visitors saw the hands that made the meals. Their work passed through hidden doors, concealed passageways, stairs that led to silence. The house was divided by design. Architecture enforced absence. What looked like harmony was built on separation. Some staircases ended behind walls, illusions of access. Some doors opened only one way. A guest might arrive by carriage, admire the symmetry, sip Madeira, and never know which servant lifted their coat or which child fetched wood to feed the hearth behind the dining room wall. Luxury distracted, but not forever. Cracks showed. Velvet faded at the hem. Frames flaked at the edges. Even crystal dulled where breath once kissed the glass. In closets and cabinets, a toy horse forgotten beneath linens, a comb missing a tooth, a chipped porcelain saucer, too cracked for display. Objects kept their silence longer than memory, and silence in this house was curated, not absence, but arrangement. Mount Vernon dazzled, but it also hid. The distillery woke before the house. Coal glowed in the hearth, steam curled from copper stills, and mash stirred like breath in wooden tubs. The air was thick, grain, yeast, and heat. By 1799, Mount Vernon was producing nearly 11,000 gallons of whiskey a year. It wasn't side business, it was precision. A ledger recorded the flow, gallons to doctors, bottles to laborers, quarts traded for services unnamed. Red wax sealed each cork, a quiet signature of value. The names of the men who fired the stills rarely appeared, but their work ran hot, exact, and unseen. Elsewhere, hemp grew rough in the fields. Cut, retted, and broken by hand, it gave rope, line, cloth. Its smell lingered on sleeves long after the labor ended. In a shed, coils hung heavy as sleep, each length measured in strength, not sentiment. And in the yard, the bell rang. Royal gift, a Spanish jack sent in 1785, stood with patient ears and proud gait. Crossed with mares, he sired mules, dozens, stronger than horses, cheaper to feed, built to endure. Washington inspected each foal with the same eye he gave to maps. He loved systems that obeyed. A guest once saw him rest a hand on the jack's collar. The bell chimed faintly. Washington smiled. Better stock, better nation. Not a toast, a fact. Upstairs, silver still gleamed. Madeira still filled crystal. But what built the future moved in grain, hooves, rope, and in fire that didn't ask to be praised. Beyond the polished parlors, Mount Vernon breathed in rope and dust. Hemp grew tall in Virginia's sun. Not myth, not smoke, but labor, pulled by hand, retted in sour pools, broken in sheds where air thickened with fiber and sweat. The sound of the break echoed, rough wood against stalk, day after day. No poetry here, only rope, tar-scented and coiled, waiting to lash sail or load. In the stable yard, Royal Gift stood beneath a slate sky, the Spanish jack gifted by Charles III. His hooves stamped the dirt. His bell rang softly against his collar. He was Washington's favorite. Crossed with mares, he side mules, strong, tireless, frugal in oats. By the end of the century, Mount Vernon stabled 60 or more. They outlasted horses, pulled harder, cost less. Washington called it improvement, not sentiment. He spoke of them like strategy. They go farther on less. Inside the house, Madeira shimmered in glass. Upstairs, a harp stood still in shadow. But outside, rope twisted tight. Mules shifted in harness, and progress moved in hooves and grain. A republic was being built, not only in halls and chambers, but in fields lined with hemp and carts drawn by stock that bore no name. The house glowed with chandeliers. The nation grew from work done in dust. And now, if this story of rope, hooves, and silence beneath silver spoke to you, leave a comment. Tell me which image stayed. The jack's bell, the break in the shed, tap like, subscribe, so when the next silence rises from the past, you'll be here to hear it. The winter of 1799 came early to Virginia. The Potomac lay gray, wind curling across its surface. Mount Vernon stood quiet against the cold. Inside, the fire snapped, velvet curtains heavy at the windows, the smell of cedar rising faint from the logs stacked in the hall. George Washington fell ill on the evening of December 13th. He had spent hours on horseback, riding his property in sleep. When he returned, his throat was raw, his voice strained. He declined to change from his damp clothes. The following morning, the cough deepened. His overseer, George Rawlins, performed a bleeding, then another. Doctors came quickly. James Crake, his longtime physician, Gustavus Brown, and Elisha Dick, the youngest among them. They gathered in the master chamber overlooking the river. The room smelled of vinegar and smoke, sheets pulled tight against frost. Crake, who had treated him since the Revolution, whispered that more bloodletting might ease the congestion. Dick objected, suggesting a tracheotomy, a new procedure. Washington, fevered yet resolute, shook his head. Let it end as it will, he said. By nightfall of December 14th, the candlelight burned low. Martha sat in a high-backed chair near the bed, her face drawn. Washington's breathing slowed, his eyes turning once toward the Potomac through the frost-dimmed glass. At 10 p.m., he spoke his last words to Leah, his secretary. "It is well." Moments later, he was still. Objects in the room held their silence. A silver teapot dulled with tarnish. A child's toy horse, once Jackie's, tucked beneath a cabinet. The bed turned back, its counterpane folded with precision, though the body it once held would not rise again. The setting was not a battlefield or the president's mansion in Philadelphia. It was home, Mount Vernon, Virginia. A private chamber facing the river he had crossed so often in youth and in war. A single chair sat near the window, empty now, watching the water move on. Tobias Lear recorded the death in his papers, his handwriting steady, though his hand must have trembled. Craig wept quietly at the foot of the bed. Martha said little. The house itself seemed to pause, as if waiting for a command that did not come. And somewhere in the estate, in a desk unopened for years, lay a folded letter, addressed simply, "To the man who never replied." Unsigned, never opened. The ink had already begun to fade. Luxury and silence shared the same air that night. Velvet curtains heavy with dust, silver dulled with neglect, a harp string upstairs long broken, a toy horse in shadow. Washington gave his country his name. What he kept for himself remains sealed. Would you have wanted that letter opened? Or is the seal part of the story? A silence left intact, more telling than any word inside. When the house fell silent on December 14, 1799, Mount Vernon shifted. George Washington was gone. Martha, now 68, became its center. The estate still carried its grandeur. In the dining room, the verdigris green walls glowed against gilt-framed portraits. The silver service from London sat polished, initials entwined. Madeira lingered in cut-glass decanters, their stoppers faint with the sweetness of wine. Velvet curtains held back winter light. The harp upstairs still leaned in its corner, one string broken. Yet silence thickened around her. Tobias Lear recorded the death. George Rawlins closed the account book. Physicians folded their instruments into leather cases. But Martha had her own decision to make. In the weeks that followed, she began to gather their letters. She opened drawers, unlocked cabinets, unwrapped bundles tied with ribbon. Some she read once more, her eyes lingering on the ink. Others she fed into the fire. The hearth hissed, paper curling black, wax seals collapsing in flame. Why burn them? Did she seek privacy? Or did she wish to decide what history would remember? The rooms carried the contradiction. Above stairs, chandeliers still shone. Porcelain dishes caught light across the sideboard. In Martha's dressing room, a tortoiseshell comb lay beside a bottle of rose water. Downstairs, smoke from the kitchen hearth seeped into beams, clinging to rafters dark with labor. Two worlds held under one roof. Visitors noted her restraint. She wore mourning black, her lace cap edged with pearl pins, her voice low, her presence steady. But the house showed signs of change. The master chamber, once Washington's, was sealed. She refused to sleep there again. Instead, she moved to a smaller room, away from the river view. The bed he died in remained untouched. The counterpane stayed folded. Letters continued to vanish. Neighbors spoke of the smell of smoke in rooms where no fire should have been. A secretary once wrote that whole bundles disappeared overnight. Was she erasing tenderness or protecting a legacy? Objects survived in silence. A silver teapot engraved with GWW, dulled but intact. A child's miniature portrait of Jackie, fading in its frame. A box of jewelry wrapped in holland cloth, unopened for years. Each artifact survived because she allowed it to. The words she chose to destroy. Martha knew her power was not only in wealth, but in memory. She curated both. She preserved the house, velvet, crystal, mahogany, while burning the evidence of feeling. What would you have done? Kept the words for history, or let the silence guard them? The widow of George Washington walked through Mount Vernon's halls in satin slippers, the sound faint against waxed floors. She touched velvet drapes, adjusted gilt-framed mirrors, selected which fragments of her life with him would remain. In the end, fire spoke louder than ink. And yet, mystery endures. Somewhere in the estate, an unsigned letter still waited in a desk. To the man who never replied. Not burned, not opened, left, like the rest of his private life, to silence. Not everything fed the fire. Some pieces survived. They endured not because they were chosen, but because they could not speak. In the parlor stood Patsy's harp. Dust layered its polished wood. A single string stretched taut, the others slack or gone. Guests lowered their voices when they noticed it. No one touched it. The harp remained in the room, as though grief itself had weight, carved in walnut and left to listen. In the master chamber, a silver teapot sat dulled on a tray, initials GW engraved at the handle. The metal bore scratches where years of hands had lifted it. No one polished it now. It had crossed the years from battlefield rations to Madeira, poured in crystal, and yet in widowhood, it remained quiet, its shine muted. Tucked beneath a cabinet lay a toy horse, wooden, crudely carved, no more than a child's plaything. It had belonged to Jackie, Martha's boy, lost to illness at 26. The toy was small enough to be overlooked when trunks were opened and inventories read. And so it stayed, a reminder hidden in plain sight, preserved not by care, but by accident. A miniature portrait rested in a drawer, its colors fading to sepia. The sitter's eyes, once bright, had clouded into shadow. The ivory surface cracked faintly at the corner, as if time itself wished to erase the likeness. No caption remained to explain it. Was it Jackie, Patsy, or someone never meant to be known? These objects did not speak aloud. They whispered. They filled the silence Martha created when she fed letters into flame. They endured because they were inert. A toy could not betray secrets. A teapot carried no confession. A harp made no claim. Luxury still gleamed upstairs. Velvet curtains that brushed against polished floors. Chandeliers glimmering with prisms. Porcelain bowls imported from Canton, stacked neatly in cupboards. Yet each glittering piece lived beside absence. What was preserved was not joy, but contradiction. Imagine walking those halls in the early 1800s. The floor creaks underfoot. A mirror reflects your shadow twice before you pass. The harp sits in the corner, mute. A cabinet opens, and the toy horse waits, where a child's laughter no longer reaches. Every object holds its silence as firmly as a lock. Is that the truest archive? The things that cannot speak, left behind to be guessed at? Or is the real story hidden in the letters Martha fed into the fire? The choice she made is still felt in every room. The house survived. The artifacts remain. But the words are gone, leaving absence heavier than any heirloom. When Washington died in December 1799, the estate began its long unraveling. Mount Vernon, polished and grand, was also a ledger of contradictions. In his will, Washington ordered that more than 120 enslaved people he directly owned be freed upon Martha's death. It was an extraordinary act for a Virginia planter of his rank. Yet the order came with silence for the other half of the enslaved population at Mount Vernon. Those who belonged to the Custis estate were untouched. Husbands and wives bound to different owners faced a future where freedom meant separation. Martha felt the tension. Rumors spread that she feared for her life, that the men and women in bondage, knowing they would be freed only after her passing, watched her more closely than before. Within a year, in 1800, she signed the papers herself. They were freed early. Was it mercy or fear? The ledgers tell the story in columns, names inked with precision. Some lines struck through when freedom came. Others left blank, as if absence could erase bonds. But not every name appears. Children born, sold, or vanished are nowhere on the page. Silence worked as efficiently as any chain. Upstairs, luxury gleamed undisturbed. A damask bed canopy still fell in heavy folds. Silver spoons lay polished on linen cloth. Crystal goblets caught the sun on the sideboard. Visitors praised the house as the residence of a statesman. Yet beneath the floorboards, in the lofts and quarters, lives had been marked only as property. Imagine the moment the papers were read aloud. A man hearing his freedom declared after decades. A woman realizing her husband was still bound to the Custis heirs. Children too young to understand why some names were called and others never spoken. Do we remember that scene as triumph or as fracture? Objects kept their silence. The silver candlesticks gleamed just as they had before. The harp upstairs gathered dust. The miniature portrait faded more each year. What changed were the margins, the way a pen struck through one name and left another untouched. Washington's will was praised as visionary. It was also incomplete. The house became both monument and reminder. Luxury carried alongside absence, silver set beside silence. The silent ledger does not balance evenly. It never did. The revolution was fought with muskets, but it was also fought with words, and sometimes those words were sharpened into lies. In 1775, as Washington took command at Cambridge, a letter appeared in print. The British claimed it had been intercepted from his hand. It spoke of a woman named Kate, a mistress given to him by a washerwoman. The letter was crude, its details too staged to be real. Yet it spread. Taverns repeated it. Parlors whispered it. The smear ran faster than the correction. 2 years later, in 1777, another document surfaced, this time more elaborate. A supposed trial transcript, filled with names and testimonies, claimed Washington kept a mistress named Mary Gibbons. She was said to receive him in disguise, slipping him notes in the dark, her words copied while he slept. The script was fiction, written to sound official. But fiction leaves marks when read often enough. The truth was simpler. The women never existed. The accusations were tools, forged to wound reputation where canon could not. Yet silence made them powerful. Washington did not write rebuttals. He did not chase gossip through pamphlets. He let absence answer. But absence is dangerous. It lets rumor take root. Imagine a parlor in Philadelphia, crystal goblets raised in toast, silver spoons chiming softly against porcelain bowls, and amid the music of dinner, a guest leans close and asks in a lowered voice, "Did you hear about Gibbons?" The lace cuffs, the Madeira, the gilt mirrors on the wall, all the trappings of refinement, could not still the murmur. In one remembered evening, a friend finally asked Washington directly, "General, the papers, they speak of you." His knife paused above the venison. He set it down, steady. "I have heard," he said. Nothing more. No anger. No explanation. Silence stood in his place. That silence worked two ways. To some, it proved strength. To others, it allowed shadow to linger. Even long after Yorktown, when his stature had risen beyond kings, the whispers never fully died. Objects in his orbit reflected contradictions. Gilt-framed portraits stared past the chatter. A mahogany desk bore the scratches of maps drawn in ink, while forgeries about his honor circulated beyond its surface. Silver candlesticks gleamed during dinners where rumor moved faster than food. The luxury of the setting only heightened the strangeness, a world polished enough to dazzle, yet vulnerable to the smallest shadow whispered into a guest's ear. How much of history is written in words that are false, but repeated until they are believed? And how much of Washington's private life is remembered through silence that chose not to answer? After his death, the forgeries were exposed for what they were: propaganda, crafted and spread by enemies. Yet the ghost of Kate and Mary Gibbons outlived the truth. Their names appear in archives today, footnotes on pages where they never belonged. Fiction pressed itself into memory, and memory rarely bothers to erase. The man left Mount Vernon polished with velvet and silver. He left the nation an example of restraint, but he also left behind questions that silence never chased away. Rumors can outlast lives. Lies can echo longer than speeches. And sometimes, the most powerful answer is the one that is never spoken. The nursery at Mount Vernon stayed quiet. A cradle smoothed with care stood near the hearth, linen folded sharp at the corners, sachets of lavender tucked between the drawers. No child ever rocked there. Dust gathered on the quilt, but the embroidery still shone, vines curling without end. When Washington died in 1799, the silence of that room became inheritance. No son to carry the name, no daughter to press her palm into the banister or whisper beneath the drapes. The house waited for laughter that never returned. Martha's children had filled it once. Patsy's harp still leaned in a shaft of light, one broken string catching dust like a web. Jackie's toy horse lay beneath a cabinet, the wood dulled by play. Their deaths, 17 and 26, left only objects, too fragile to discard, too painful to use. The estate had to pass elsewhere. Nephews and distant kin walked the halls, their boots heavier, less familiar. They paused in parlors dressed with velvet curtains, admired the silver tea service engraved with initials not their own, and traced fingers across the balustrade as if the wood might confess more than silence allowed. Imagine walking those halls in the winter of 1800. The fire in the great room snaps and hisses, its warmth pooling against verdigris walls. Chandeliers drip with wax, their prisms scattering light across portraits in gilt frames. And yet, in the nursery upstairs, the air is cold. The cradle waits in silence. The embroidery threads still shine, though no hand tugs the quilt. Washington had nephews to inherit property, but heirs, he had none. Lineage in Virginia was measured in names, scratched into silver, coats of arms pressed into bookplates, portraits passed from wall to wall. At Mount Vernon, objects remained, but bloodlines stopped. A miniature portrait rested in a drawer, ivory surface cracking at the edges. No name written beneath. Was it meant for a descendant? Was it once a gift withheld? The mystery lies in what is missing, not in what remains. Martha understood the emptiness. She kept trunks unopened, cabinets sealed, as though inheritance itself was something best deferred. She ordered accounts closed with precision, each figure neat, each margin sharp. But numbers cannot replace a sun, nor can ledgers carry a voice. The house became a museum of absence. Velvet curtains fell heavy over windows that framed the river. Silver spoons clinked against porcelain cups at suppers where nephews filled chairs meant for children. Upstairs, the nursery kept its cedar scent, patient, unclaimed. Is this what the father of his country gave to his house? A ledger of silence where heirs should have been? Or did he intend for the nation itself to be his only child? The answer lingers not in declarations, but in objects left behind. A cradle never rocked, a harp that never played again, a toy horse dulled by memory. The house inherited them, the family did not. After December 1799, the house learned a new sound, paper touching flame. Not often, not hurried. A page drawn from a bundle, the ribbon untied with a small tug, the faint sigh when folded creases opened again after years, then the rasp of a hearth shovel against brick, and the quick, bright edge of fire taking ink. Martha kept the keys at her waist, looped on a silver chatelaine. You could hear them before you saw her, a soft chiming in corridors where morning black brushed the wainscot. In the master's study, she unlocked drawers one by one, a japanned letter tray. Ignite. Pigeonholes lined in blue paper, a narrow compartment hidden behind a false back, a cedar box wrapped in holland cloth that sighed when the linen slipped free. On the desk lay a spoon for sealing wax, blackened at the bowl, a small sand shaker for drying ink, a penknife honed thin by years of trimming quills. She kept these where he had left them, as if the room were a portrait of his hand. It was not sentiment alone, it was order. She lived inside it. Bundles of letters weighted with their own gravity, some tied with blue ribbon, some with coarse twine, some with the length of unraveling silk. She sorted them without spectacle. Family accounts to one side, notes of invitation to another, private lines into a stack she did not read twice. From time to time she paused, eyes steady on a sentence that arrived like a familiar footfall. Then she turned to the fire. The hearth spoke back. Kindling cracked. A corner of paper curled like a leaf in drought. Wax wafers softened and collapsed, red sinking into black. Names disappeared into smoke that moved quickly up the flue and out into Virginia air, as cleanly as if they had never been said. Why burn them? Protection, pride, mercy. Each answer is a door that opens onto another question. She knew the weight of legacy. She also knew the damage of exposure. A life lived under ceremony acquires weather of its own. Some storms you let pass, some you smother. She did not feed everything to the flames. Receipts remained, measured and neat. Lists of linen and china, corrected in the margin with a scrawl that was unmistakably hers. A few letters too, the ones that could bear witness without loss. Directions for repairs, messages from kin, a line here and there of household concern. But tenderness? Doubt? Those went up in smoke, each sheet a boundary drawn in orange light. The room conspired with her. Beeswax warmed on the tabletop until your fingertips came away scented with it. The brass tinderbox on the sill clicked shut, the flint tucked again into its bed. A Dutch coal scuttle, beaten bright at the rim, squatted near the grate, with its mouth open as if listening. By evening, A grey ash drift settled along the fender like first frost. Across Mount Vernon, luxury held its posture. The verdigris in the dining room glowed despite the season. A set of Canton porcelain bowls sat nested on a sideboard, their cobalt rings catching winter light. A French girandole on the mantel multiplied the flame into small suns. In Martha's own chamber, a glass bottle of rose water slept beside a tortoise-shell comb, the scent faint but stubborn. These stayed, words did not. She did not sleep again in the room where he died. A smaller chamber took her instead, farther from the river and the echo of his last breath. She closed the master door and left it to its stillness, the counterpane smooth as always, the windows looking out on water that moved, whether anyone watched it or not. Some decisions are a form of mourning, others are a map. Outside, the Potomac kept its color, slate under cloud, pewter under moon. Inside, the air filled with contrasts. Madeira, sweet in a glass. Vinegar, sharp on a cloth when a maid cleaned the brass. The dry rasp of paper lifted from a pile. The feathered hush of ash sliding down the back of the grate. A widow shapes her world with what she refuses as much as with what she keeps. From time to time she spoke aloud, gently, to no one. "This can go," she would say, a page halfway to the fire. Or, at a drawer, fingertips resting on the edge. "Not this." The words were small, the decisions were not. An empire of memory stood on the hinge between them. Tobias Lear came and went, with ledgers tucked under his arm, his face composed. He recorded bequests, noted repairs, took down instructions with a quill shaved new. He did not ask what she burned. Some courtesies are also obligations. Some silences are the only kindness anyone can offer the living. What do you save when the world wants everything? What do you owe to the dead and to the future that keeps knocking? A wafer seal rolled under the skirting and hid there, pink as a wren's egg. A ribbon snapped when tugged and fell to the carpet like a vein. On the windowsill, 2 flakes of sealing wax cooled into lumps no larger than a thumbnail. The room collected these small survivals the way a shore keeps shells, not because it chooses them, but because tide and time leave them stranded. By spring 1800, she had burned much. Enough that a secretary later remarked on gaps, "You could feel rather than measure." Enough that historians would spend centuries reading around a flame. A handful of letters escaped, a turn of phrase to a niece about feeling like a prisoner, a note to a brother about the election she did not want, and from these, we build a woman with corners and steel. The rest we infer from heat and ash. In the late afternoon, when the slant of light worked like a ruler across the floorboards, the study softened. Shadows of the window muntins climbed the wall, divide upon divide. She lay a final sheet across the hearthstone and watched the fire take it. The edges brightened, then lifted, then went dark. The smoke searched briefly for a way back into the room, failed, and left. Down the hall, a cabinet door stood ajar. In it, a lacquered letterbox waited, gold cracked into fine rivers. empty now, but still lovely. The shape of what it once held remained stamped into the lining, a negative of paper, a memory made of absence. Martha did not explain herself. She locked the study. The keys chimed. The house breathed. Somewhere beyond the west lawn, the river turned and kept going. What we know of them survives in what she did not burn. Accounts, portraits, objects that cannot betray. What we will never know glows briefly each time we imagine her hand above the flame. Then it is gone. And yet a different letter, unsigned, unopened, addressed to the man who never replied, stayed in its hiding place. Not hers to burn, not ours to read. A seal within a seal, the final proof that some silences belong to no one living. The Potomac carried everything past Mount Vernon, barges of tobacco, skiffs heavy with fish, sloops riding the tide. From the window of the master chamber, the river widened into grey expanse, a mirror that remembered storms and sun with equal ease. Washington had crossed it countless times in youth, surveyed its banks, fought across other waters, but this view belonged to his final years. Inside, the house framed that river in symmetry. A long hallway ran straight as a musket barrel, doors opening to rooms measured by order and wealth. The west parlor glowed with walls painted bold verdigris green, the kind of pigment so dear that visitors noted it as much as the portraits. On the mantel, a French girandole multiplied candlelight into a dozen small flames. Crystal chimed when touched, a thin sound swallowed quickly by drapes of velvet that fell to the floor. Martha's chamber held quieter riches, a spinet desk of walnut, its drawers inlaid with satin wood, a small bottle of imported rose water, and a pair of pearl-handled scissors used to clip thread. A chair by the fire bore cushions stitched with cruel embroidery, blossoms curling across linen, their colors faded but still intricate. Downstairs, another world moved. Copper kettles sweated over the kitchen hearth, the air spiced with cloves and char. Servants carried trays through hidden doors, silver platters reflecting only flashes of faces before vanishing into parlors above. Architecture did not just separate, it concealed. The estate itself performed the balance between grandeur and silence. In the garden, boxwood-lined paths cut into careful angles. In the stable yard, the bell of royal gift rang when the mule shifted his weight. In the distillery, the air thickened with mash. But in the house, silk curtains, gilt-framed mirrors, and tables spread with porcelain from Canton. A republic was being formed beyond these walls, rough as a stump speech, loud as a tavern quarrel. Yet Mount Vernon told a different story. Elegance wrapped around omission, a letter unopened, a nursery unused, a harp left silent in a shaft of light. What is the true inheritance of a nation? Its river, rolling forward without pause. Its rooms, furnished in velvet and silver. Or its silences, preserved by choice and chance, still whispering centuries later. The Potomac turned, The room stayed still. The Republic carried his name. The silence carried the rest. Not all inheritances arrive with ceremony. Some wait in corners, in drawers, in shadows. On a tray, in the master chamber sat a silver teapot, initials G.W. faint from years of polishing. Its spout dulled, its lid dented by use. Guests once admired it when Madeira steamed in cups, but now it waited in silence, untouched, carrying memory in scratches rather than shine. In a cabinet near the stairwell lay a toy horse, carved from wood, its paint long since rubbed away. Jackie's hand had guided it across floors polished with beeswax, the little wheels rattling as it rolled. Decades later, it hid beneath linen, discovered only when a servant dusted too thoroughly. It was his, Martha said softly, before tucking it back into shadow. Objects survive where voices cannot. A miniature portrait, ivory surface cracking at the corner, showed a face blurred by time. The sitter's eyes, once sharp, had clouded into sepia. No caption beneath, no record in any ledger. Whose likeness was it meant to preserve? A son never born? A daughter never named? Patsy's harp stood upstairs, its wood warm with dust. One string broken, the other slack. No child would pluck its notes again. Visitors glanced at it and looked away. Some silences are too delicate to disturb. Imagine walking those halls at dusk. The chandeliers already dim, velvet curtains drawn. A servant trims the wick of a candlestick, its flame trembling in gilt reflection. The house breathes faintly of rosewater, of smoke caught in rafters, of cedar boards rubbed with oil. Every object watches you, waiting for someone to ask what story it carries. What do we learn from the things that remain? The polished teapot with initials fading, the toy horse dulled by play, the miniature portrait without a name. Are these clues, or only reminders that the truest truths lie in what we cannot know? Once, Martha held the toy horse in her hand before returning it to the cabinet. Jackie loved this, she murmured. Just that. Nothing more. The words felt heavier than any will or estate inventory. Objects do not lie. They do not explain. They endure. And in their endurance they whisper what letters, diaries and ledgers choose not to say. The title Father of his country has echoed for 2 centuries. Yet inside Mount Vernon, the silence he left behind speaks as loudly as any monument. The house itself remains the truest archive. The west parlour still glows green with its costly verdigris paint. Chandeliers drip prisms of light, scattering into corners where conversation once flickered. The dining table, long enough to seat 20, still bears the marks of cutlery, of silver spoons engraved with initials, of crystal glasses that once caught candlelight like water. Upstairs, Martha's chamber still holds her vanity, mahogany polished, drawers that once carried ribbons scented with lavender. But the most haunting room faces the river, the master bedchamber, where Washington died in December 1799. stands much as it did then. A single chair set at the window, velvet curtains heavy with dust. A counterpane folded with precision, its creases sharp, untouched. The view across the Potomac endless, as if the water itself remembered. Objects linger as though waiting to be asked their stories. A silver teapot engraved with GW, tarnished thick around the handle. Patsy's harp, broken string curling like a question. Jackie's toy horse, hidden beneath a cabinet, wheels dulled by years. A miniature portrait with no name, the ivory cracked at the edges. Each a fragment, each a silence. And in a desk, a sealed letter, folded once, addressed simply to the man who never replied. Unsigned, never opened. The wax brittle, the ink faded. Who wrote it? Sally Fairfax, remembered across decades? A loyal friend? A voice erased from the record? The mystery endures, not because the letter hides an answer, but because the silence it carries resists resolution. Some truths, like the Potomac, move steadily on. Some remain locked behind seals we cannot break. Washington gave a country his name. He gave it precedent, farewell, example. But he also chose what it would never know. Children never born, letters burned, rooms closed, rumors unanswered. His legacy is both marble and ash. Both words spoken and silences curated. Walk through Mount Vernon today, and you can still feel it. The scent of cedar from the floorboards, the heaviness of velvet curtains, the echo in a room meant for heirs that never arrived, the sealed trunk in the study, waiting, its silence louder than any proclamation. What is the truest inheritance? The republic he founded, or the absences he left behind? What do we honor more? The silver engraved with initials, or the letter never opened? He was the father of a nation, but silence was his final heir. If these fragments of George Washington's private life, the letters unanswered, the harp unplayed, the toy horse waiting in shadow, tell us anything, it is that history is built as much on what is missing as on what survives. And Mount Vernon itself still holds secrets. In our next video, the forgotten history schools hid about Mount Vernon. We'll walk through the hidden corridors, the lives erased from ledgers, the rooms polished for visitors but never truly explained. So tell me, what object in this story spoke most to you? The harp, the toy horse, the sealed letter? Share your thoughts below. And if this journey through silence carried you tonight, leave a like, add your comment, and subscribe, so you'll be here when the next page of history's ledger opens.